that, as many bits as possible. And then the ship itself, once it splashes down, it'll probably sort of, tip over, right? And that tip over, it's not meant to survive any of that. I mean, once they catch ships and things like that, no ship is designed to survive a tip over as much we want to survive, right? Hey, if it does, I'm all for it, right? We'll see what they do with that. But it's a boom that we should expect there, right? No matter how soft or how gentle that landing burn is for the ship.
We're going to call them RADs, Rapid Authorized Disassembly. That's what I'm calling it. So maybe we'll coin a new term here. I think I did do some research on this term before I introduced it tonight. There were some folks on Reddit talking about RAD before, although not authorized. So that's our spin on it. Hey, while we're counting down here, we got 9 minutes and 28 seconds left, and I want to just acknowledge a couple of super chats that are in the queue here. Brock Bowers, a $500 super chat tip. Thank you very much for your contribution there. Shout out to the team in the field and all those behind the scenes. He's wondering if Kevin got his new Linus Tech Tips screwdriver. I don't know. So we'll have to have him let us know about that. Space Pope, $400 tip. Thank you very much for that contribution as well. Bless this test and this team. Thank you very much. I know everyone's working incredibly hard. I have the easy job here. I'm in my basement, but there's a whole crew of folks who are out and about at Starbase bringing these images to you, and it's not easy. So definitely thank you for all the contributions that help keep the lights on and the cameras rolling here. So Alex, we have some news from
and that was
from
big
the pad
support
here?
As well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are. I mean, right now the word from SpaceX is that everything is really good for launch right at the time that they are targeting right now, and so we are just a bit over 8 minutes away from that liftoff time. So far, the weather is good, range is good, like everything is green, everything is good to go. They're still loading propellant on the booster because the booster is still not fully loaded yet, but it's really already there. Like, it's just a few more minutes away from that. The ship main tanks are loaded. They're just trying to wrap up liquid oxygen and liquid methane load on the header tanks, the two little tanks at the top of the ship, right? Those are the final ones. There's a lot of things going on right now, of course, as they close out all of the propellant loads and things like that. Reminder that at T-minus 3 minutes 20 seconds, that's when the ship propellant load is complete. T-minus 2 minutes and 50 seconds, that's the booster propellant load complete milestone. So just 5 minutes away from ending propellant load. And boy, my heart is racing.
And what's funny is just how fast this hour goes by. You think about, it's an hour, how it's going to take forever. But it's amazing. Like, here we are, 7 minutes away. Now, granted, we've been chatting the whole time, so maybe that's helped pass the time. But I remember being at some of these NASA launches where it's like, I got an hour, and the next thing you know, it's 5 minutes out, and you got to get moving to get all your cameras into position. So I'm sure that the team is out there working hard to make sure everything is ready to go here. Ryan, I wanted to bring you back in. This is the last launch of this variant of Starship and its booster and its ground system. We talked a little bit about some of the changes on the ground earlier. What's going to change visually on Starship after this launch, if anything?
The vehicle itself is just going to be huge. If it wasn't huge already, it's going to get even taller. So even just being on the ground,
it's going to be huger.
It's going to be huger, exactly. Even just being on the ground, it's going to be incredible to see. In terms of going through flight, it's going to look pretty similar, but it's going to have 3 grid fins on the booster in a T shape. I'm still not 100% certain on that grid fin configuration to say, but we're approaching 6 minutes here. I think I can let the T-shaped grid fins out of my head for the next few minutes, and we could just enjoy this final, nice grid fin configuration, let's say, with this version of the Super Heavy booster.
Right, and wait for the next one. And by adding that grid fin, that all comes from the data that they collect on these missions, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're collecting data every step of the way, and when they can iterate, they can. And if they think this design is going to be better, even if it looks cursed, if it works better, then I suppose it's the better design to go with at the end of the day.
Right, and in 5 minutes and change, we'll see how much they've learned as this goes along. And Alex, there's some big changes coming. This is still the old hardware. I'm guessing there have been improvements made to this ship that they've learned from prior missions, but the big changes are coming up in the next round.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about the next version of Starship. We're gonna see Raptor 3. We're gonna have a much more improved booster, right, with more power and more efficient systems, if you will. Lots of things that are gonna be coming online there. The ship will also be capable of docking to other ships as well, because that's the big thing for unlocking going to everywhere with this ship, right? Being able to dock to another ship and being able to transfer propellant and refueling in orbit, that's the major thing, that's sort of, the key to this program, if you will.
That's right, because what's going to take to get to the moon is we need a Starship that can land on the moon, and we need to fuel it, which means that you have to send up multiple missions of fuel, get these rockets back, and send up more. So Florida's going to get pretty busy here with those fueling missions, and that's just one of the things that this program is going to be producing. And this is why this mission is so important, is to get all of these flight dynamics figured out. There's a lot of complicated systems here. They're also doing some commercial activity here. They're not launching real Starlinks or deploying real Starlinks this time. We haven't really talked about this yet on the stream, but they will be deploying some of those dummy Starlink satellites like we saw last time, because if they can start dropping off Starlinks as they're testing future Starships, that can help pay for the bills here, Ryan, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the background there for a moment we heard Jack shouting, check, check, check. Jack, your microphone works, just so you know.
All right, Jack is ready to go, and I am just about ready here to turn things over to Ryan whenever you're ready, because we're getting into the critical phase here.
Yeah, 3 minutes, 40 seconds to go. We have pulled the ticker away. That means it's game time. You know it's time for business when the ticker gets pulled away. We can see Starship 38 there sitting. The chopsticks are open. Ship quick disconnect. Still connected for the time being, but expect that to disconnect quickly. That's where the name comes from, in just over 3 minutes time. Things still getting frosty.
Ooh boy.
Very frosty.
Should be seeing the tower vent coming back as they finish load onto the ship. We're getting ready for that.
You don't need a fuel meter for Starship.
Yeah, exactly. We are continuing to watch that frost rise under
there
2 minus 3 minutes
vent.
now. There's the tower vent coming back on. Everything continuing to look good. We're getting a beautiful sunset right now. South Texan sunsets, there's just something about them. I don't know what it is, but it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Rocket ship golden hour.
Exactly. I think it's something magical that just happens in South Texas at this time of day. And I can't explain it, but it's unlike anywhere else in the world. And we're continuing to count down. Under 2.5 minutes now. Things are starting to get real. Deep breaths, everybody. Deep breaths.
Deep breaths. Just imagine being the folks in the control room that have to push the button here. Or rather, it kind of goes on its own.
No issues at this point in the countdown.
I mean, even you could hear on the control loop from the first
looks like booster propellant load is ended because OLM vent is back. So propellant load has been completed on Starship. And this thing is still ticking down. I'm only hearing good words. Looks like everything is ready to go. No expecting any holds or anything in the T-minus 40-second mark. Whew. And it's going to fly through,
Alex.
right?
Deep breaths.
Deep breaths.
Yeah.
Less than 2 minutes to go. A little bit of booster toggling there. Less than a minute and a half to go before liftoff. As a reminder, T-minus 40 seconds is the point at which SpaceX can hold if they need to, but right now it doesn't appear as though they're going to. Less than a minute remaining. Past the 40-second mark. They have polled go for launch. You've got about 20 seconds remaining in real time. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines ignition. And we have movement. Liftoff. Liftoff of Starship Flight 11, the final flight of version 2 of the Starship Super Heavy rocket. 33 Raptor engines ignited, and the 400-plus foot tall rocket is making its ascent from Starbase.
Here at
We're coming up on max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Past max Q now, looking at most engines cutoff, or MECO. That'll be followed by hot staging just a couple of seconds afterwards, when those 6 Raptor engines on the ship upper stage ignite. Keeping our eyes open here in Florida to see if we can see the Starship rocket as it makes its pass just south of Florida. Roughly 30 seconds to MECO. So far, all 33 Raptor engines continue to burn nominally here on the second and final flight of B-15. Less than 10 seconds to MECO. And a good visual of hot staging there. Boost back burn underway. The booster will be targeting an aquatic splashdown in the Gulf. It will not return for a catch as intended with this mission. Looks like we've got 12 out of 13 engines on the booster. 6 engines on the ship upper stage. So far, a good nominal flight at this point of the upper stage. Boost back burn should be wrapping up here momentarily. There goes the hot stage ring. Little more than 4 minutes into flight. The next milestone is coming up at about T plus 6 minutes and 20 seconds when the landing burn should happen. SpaceX releasing some of the propellant prior to the start of that landing burn. You can see the hot staging ring falling in the foreground from the camera's perspective. There you can see the hot stage ring from Pete Carson's tracking shot. Confirmation of a nominal trajectory from SpaceX with the ship upper stage. SpaceX is less than a minute away from the start of the landing burn. Instead of going from 13 engines down to 3, SpaceX will instead go from 13 to 5 to 3, as is currently designed for this mission. This is going to be the type of configuration that SpaceX intends to use for the version 3 edition of the ship, of the Super Heavy booster. Coming up on the start of the landing burn in just a few seconds, and there it goes. All 313 down to 5. Down to 3. Booster should hover for a second before splashing down. Here you see the hover. Engines shut down. And coming into the ocean, or the Gulf. And some celebratory faces and cheering from the team at Starbase. Views of ship have come back. Let's go ahead to that. All 6 Raptor engines continue their first burn on the ship upper stage, S-38. Coming up in just about a minute and a half will be Starship engine cutoff, SECO 1. That will happen at about T plus 8 minutes and 58 seconds. And we've got a nice view from our tracking camera here in Florida. You're looking at Ship 38 before it concludes its first burn. Well done to Adam. And a really nice view there as we're coming up to SECO. Really nice jellyfish effect there. And you can see the staggered shutdown of those Raptor engines happening in real time. Still got good views from here in Florida. Confirmation of a nominal orbit insertion. ship continues its coast phase here. Still some great tracking shots from here in Florida. Just had to pop off mic for a brief second to see this with my own eyes. You've got a really nice view of the ship passing over the Kennedy Space Center press site here. Stephen, as we are now in this coast phase, your thoughts on the mission so far? Seems like a nominal test of the Super Heavy booster like SpaceX wanted, and we've got some really nice views continuing on with the Starship upper stage.
Yeah, the flight so far has really gone perfectly from what I could tell, other than there was that signature on the display of one engine during the boost back burn that was not firing. But yeah, the Super Heavy booster looked like it came down controlled. The step down from 13 engines to 5 to 3 during the landing burn looked like that was all smooth. The ship looks like it's performing excellent so far. I was actually just looking back at the last flight, and the ship reached the exact same velocity down to the same kilometer per hour, 26,495 kilometers per hour at SECO, at second stage engine cutoff. So that is exactly where they were on the last flight. So they should be on the right trajectory right now out toward the Indian Ocean.
That's all good to hear, and hopefully things will continue on. We'll have essentially a repeat as far as the flight path for Ship 38 that we saw with Ship 37 in Flight 10. We're just about coming up on 12 minutes into this mission so far, and in about 6.5 minutes from now, we'll see the start of the payload deployment sequence with those Starlink simulators that will be jettisoned from the so-called PEZ dispenser on the ship upper stage, which it's a little bit hard to see with this lighting, but you can just barely make out the outline of the PEZ dispenser door. Actually, that was a nice illumination of it. It's just above the S38 lettering there on the steel part of ship, which is above the edge of the tile line. If you're looking from the bottom of your screen towards the top, you can see the arc of the PEZ dispenser door. Stephen, like we've been talking about throughout the course of the broadcast, obviously among the most important things for SpaceX to get from this mission is learnings about the heat shield, but also quite important for them is to be able to capture good data about how they can deploy these V3, the future V3 version of the Starlink satellites.
Yes. It was pretty interesting to see on the last flight. Wasn't really sure what to expect. We've seen the animation for years now of what the PEZ dispenser is like, but to see it in action last time was really kind of cool. The pulley system they have inside the vehicle to raise up each Starlink before it's ejected out the door. All kind of cool. Really neat to see all that function on the last flight, and we should see it again in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can bring in that animation that we saw earlier in the broadcast, a nice comparison of the previous iteration of the Starlink satellites. So let's see if I can add this momentarily. Time now T plus 15 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. We're just a few minutes away from the start of the payload deployment demo. Before we get there, just want to show off this animation that we were alluding to that SpaceX showed briefly, the difference in size between the version 1.5 Starlink satellites, the V2 minis, which are currently launching, and the version 3 Starlinks stand-in are currently on board Ship 38, which you can see inside the payload bay right now. Those large steel structures which are designed to simulate the size and mass of future Starlink V3 satellites. Stephen, now that we've got the visual here, was there anything more that you wanted to add about what we were hearing from SpaceX and what we'll be seeing shortly with the deployment of these demo satellites?
Just I wanted to bring the attention to the size difference. So the version 1.5 satellites began launching. Was that in? I'd have to go back and look. So many Starlink versions several years ago, and then version 2 mini started launching in 2023, if my memory serves correctly. Mm-hmm. And version 3 should begin launching next year. But just seeing the size difference from one solar array to 2 solar arrays, I believe version 2, the dimensions with the arrays deployed is about 30 meters.
Yep, 30 meters.
So just looking at version 3, I don't want to hazard an estimate, but significantly more than 30 meters tip to tip.
Yeah, it looks like it's almost double the size of each solar array, maybe slightly less than doubling the length. So, adding another 30 meters on top of that, so 60 meters total, I guess. I mean, super duper ballparking right now based off of an animation.
Yeah, I mean, these might be the largest solar arrays. I need to go look this up. Might be a good little piece of trivia to know about, but these may be the largest solar arrays flying in space, other than the International Space Station and maybe Tiangong, the Chinese station.
It'll be some good Space Coast Bar trivia for you.
Yes.
And it looks like, given the position of the cameras, we may get an external deployment shot, which would be a first on this mission. Not quite exactly the angle of the animation that we've seen, but since there isn't a separate camera that's flying alongside Starship, I guess this is our next best thing of getting a third-party vantage point of the deployment of these demonstration satellites.
Right, yeah. Of course, they're in the Earth's shadow, so they're out over the Atlantic Ocean. No sunlight, so it's going to be hard to see, although it looks like there is a light. There are lights inside the ship that we can see shining out that door, so we should see something move when they begin the deployments here momentarily.
And we've got some movement. The first of the dummy satellites is being released. During the last flight of Starship Super Heavy, we were told it was about a minute per deployment, and that the version 3 iteration of Starship would be capable of carrying on the order of 60 Starlink satellites, so taking right about an hour for a full stack to deploy, at least at the onset. So this is roughly analogous to what we will be seeing for future V3 deployment, where you see them deploy 2, and then the stack will lower down, the next one will be prepared, and we'll see it go off on its own. And just as a reminder for viewers, this is a suborbital mission. These demonstrator Starlink satellites will follow the same trajectory as the ship upper stage. They will not stay in orbit, or they are not being deployed into orbit, I should say. They're following the suborbital trajectory and will also splash down in the Indian Ocean. Something we also don't normally see, or at least I haven't typically picked up on, a nice little peek at maybe a supplier for part of Starship. We've got a barcode and a Made in the USA label with. They've gone to a double view, so it's a little bit harder to read, but that's the COPV for the ship, one of the COPVs. Which, of course, one of the big updates for the version 2 was to shore up the COPVs following the explosion that happened during pre-flight static fire testing with Ship 36 out at the Massey's test stand, which is why SpaceX has, with Ship 37 and 38, been doing static fires over at Pad A instead of at that test site. And a view from the outside, but it's quite tough to see the dummy Starlinks deploy from there. Hopefully the first time that SpaceX is deploying actual V3 Starlink satellites, they will do it in orbital daylight, so you can just barely make it out at the top of your screen, that shape that's drifting away from Ship 38. As you can see with the telemetry data on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, Ship 38 is currently out over the Atlantic Ocean, making its way towards its destination, the splashdown out in the Indian Ocean. And this looks to be the final of the 8 Starlink simulator satellites, all deployed nominally. The second time in the Starship program that SpaceX has been able to deploy these satellites, or these simulator satellites, that again are not being launched into orbit, but following the suborbital trajectory of the ship upper stage. The payload bay door is going to be closing, and coming up next is the engine relight. The single Raptor engine coming up at about T plus 37 minutes and 49 seconds. And a nice view of the SpaceX team elated at the success so far of Starship Flight 11. Certainly an important chapter being closed here as teams look now or soon towards the upcoming launches of the version 3 edition of Starship Super Heavy from Pad B. As a reminder to our viewers who may have joined in a little bit later in the broadcast in regard to the Falcon 9 rocket from here in Florida, SpaceX did push back that T0 liftoff of Kuiper Falcon number 3. Now looking at a liftoff from Pad 40 at 9:58 p.m. Eastern, 01:58 UTC. So deconflicting with the Starship launch, and we'll have live dedicated coverage of that mission beginning about an hour prior to liftoff. Currently in a coast phase ahead of the relight demonstration with one of those Raptor engines. It gives us a moment to peek over at the live chat. Thank a few folks for your support as we continue to watch the progress of Starship Flight 11. Want to welcome in new channel members Shannon McAdams, Todd Eaton, and returning channel members, the Rocket Girl and Psychonaut 69. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. As a reminder, channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. T plus 31 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. just about 6 minutes away from the start of that relight demonstration. Want to thank our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for very generously gifting 20 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, guys. And to our 20 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Chuck and Jen in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month that you were just gifted. Getting some views back now of the ship upper stage. Appears to be continuing to follow a nominal trajectory here as the engine relight is coming up now in just about 5 minutes. In addition to the Falcon 9 rocket launch that's coming up in just about 2 hours from now. If you haven't already gotten your fill, by the time tonight is over, there's another Falcon 9 rocket launch setting to lift off from Vandenberg Space Force Base. That's coming up in just about 23 hours and 15 minutes with the latest batch of satellites for the Space Development Agency's Tranche 1 Transport Layer C. This next batch of satellites that's launching are manufactured by Lockheed Martin. Stephen, bringing you back in for a moment while we're watching Starship continue to coast, since you're, I would say, a bit more plugged into the defense space than I am. Thankfully, you're with us on this broadcast. Just want to get your thoughts on now coming up to the second flight for the Space Development Agency's constellation of satellites, the first 21 that were deployed by SpaceX, built by York Space. Got the next 21 on deck from Lockheed Martin. And probably the next ones will be coming up from Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, well, this is the second of, I think, 10 launches planned for this generation of Space Development Agency satellites. This is deploying basically the Pentagon's own mega constellation. This first generation will be 150 satellites. There are plans for hundreds more over the next few years or so. And this transport layer is one element of a multi-layer architecture. The transport layer is essentially, they're essentially data relaying communication satellites in low Earth orbit. And they will be joined by what's called the tracking layer early next year. And those actually have sensors on board to detect missile launches, but not just ballistic missiles, which is what the military's early warning network is currently focused on. These SDA satellites are much closer to the Earth, and they can detect the faint signals or signatures from even hypersonic missiles, even cruise missiles potentially, to provide early warning of threats that are emerging, basically, because hypersonic missiles were not really a thing when the military devised its existing current generation of early warning satellites. So this network eventually, when fully deployed, is designed to basically be able to detect a missile launch and then transmit that data where the missile is, where it's heading, directly to a shooter on the ground, whether it's a Patriot missile battery or ATACMS or some other type of interceptor, maybe in the future, even a space-based interceptor with Golden Dome, to be able to take out that missile. So this particular launch is the second of 10 in this generation, but what will eventually be many dozens of SDA launches going forward to deploy this network.
Want to pick up that conversation in just a second, but we're about a minute away from the Raptor in Space Relight demo, so want to pivot back to the Starship mission for a moment, and then we'll pick up our conversation on SDA constellation here in just a second. This, as we've been talking about, Stephen, of course, is an important demonstration that will be able to show that SpaceX in future missions can perform a safe deorbit burn, which is not what they're doing here. This is just a demonstration of the capability, but an important one that they'll need for safe Starship operations moving forward with version 3. In-light demo expected in about 20 seconds. And there we've got ignition. And a good shutdown. Confirmation of a second nominal orbit insertion. Certainly good news for SpaceX and the Starship program, as version 2 of Starship is about to wrap up here with the conclusion of this mission. Currently T plus 38 minutes, 38 seconds in this flight. In less than 10 seconds be the start of the atmospheric entry period. Stephen, going back to the conversation we were just having about the Space Development Agency, as we continue to track views of the ship upper stage, just noting for our viewers some of the shifting of the camera view or the movement of the forward flaps in which the camera is perched. Stephen, earlier this year we saw a handful of missions for the National Reconnaissance Office proliferated architecture, which is the NRO's own mega constellation, which they're hoping will consist of hundreds of what we believe to be Star Shield satellites. Obviously, the NRO is far less open and transparent with the inner workings of their satellite constellation, but from the reporting you've done on SDA and from the little that we do know about the NRO's constellation, what are some of the key differences that you're following between what the SDA is hoping to accomplish with its constellation and the NRO?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because historically there's often been a turf war between NRO and the Department of Defense, but the NRO, my understanding, the public understanding of what the NRO's constellation does is it is essentially a network of reconnaissance satellites. So it's presumably electro-optical sensors on board to observe the ground and basically do what the NRO does with its other satellites, but this proliferated architecture that the NRO is deploying in partnership with SpaceX and we think Northrop Grumman is basically creating this constellation of satellites looking down at the Earth to provide really rapid refresh of imagery of different places around the world, more so than the NRO's existing satellites could do on their own. The SDA constellation initially is going to be focused on missile warning and data relay and tasking of different weapon systems. So basically the the SDA constellation can detect where a missile is and send that information directly to an interceptor or the cockpit of an airplane or a warship, wherever that interceptor is in position needed to take out the threat. And eventually, though, the SDA constellation in the future is looking at proliferating or deploying numerous satellites to augment things like GPS, also augment other parts of the Space Force's what they do in space, including potentially things like non-Earth imaging and other types of activities. So it's not, the SDA vision is not just limited to missile warning and data relay. There are other applications eventually as well, even weather monitoring potentially down the road that the SDA is looking at doing. But right now they're focusing on missile warning and data relay, and NRO is focused on surveillance and reconnaissance.
And we're just hit a quick technical snafu. We're working to get this stream back up here momentarily for you folks. Apologies for the brief interruption. We should have views coming back online momentarily, so bear with us here for just a moment. And there, we've got those views back. Currently T plus 45 minutes, 27 seconds and counting. SpaceX continues to bring its Starship back for a splashdown in the Indian Ocean. Still getting some pretty solid views from the various cameras around the ship. SpaceX has 4 Starlink terminals As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, the ship upper stage is just southeast of the island of Madagascar as it continues its path towards splashdown in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Australia. Got a nice little dragon decal by the look of it near the end of the aft flap that we saw for just a brief second. Stephen, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, just wanted to note that they're now below the Kármán line, so 88 kilometers and descending.
Good note there. Now back from the demarcation of space as it continues on, heading towards its destined splashdown spot. And I was trying to remember exactly where we saw this in Flight 10, Stephen, but so far it looks like we haven't seen any issue in the aft section of the ship. Recall last time we saw a little bit of breakup near the engine bay, which of course didn't derail the flight from continuing on its nominal flight path, but so far it looks like they aren't even having issues like that.
Yeah, no obvious evidence or signs of anything like that so far, but yeah, it happened early in the reentry process around this time, but I can't remember the exact minute of the flight from Flight 10 when that occurred either.
One part of the heat shield that they're going to be watching very closely is just at the bottom of your screen beneath the second counter, which is one of the catch fittings, which will future version be used to help the ship be recovered by the chopsticks at the launch tower Mechazilla back at Starbase and eventually at towers here in Florida as well. So understanding how well the thermal protection system protects the integrity of those catch fittings is going to be key learnings for SpaceX before they ever try to recapture one of these ships in version 3.
And these views never get old. The plasma building into a sheath around the vehicle, just blanketing the entire ship. We've seen videos of this obviously since the dawn of the space age, the shuttle era. They had videos of this during reentry, but to see it live is just really mind blowing.
Live, and with considering the amount of energy it's going through, not a lot of breakup in the video either. It's quite the feat of engineering. And as SpaceX commentators have noted, there are intentionally missing tiles without additional heating protection behind them. So that's part of the key learnings for SpaceX, is to learn the resilience of the ship upper stage, both in the areas protected by these heat shield tiles as well as those without, and what ship can withstand, and that'll help inform future Starship design. SpaceX commentators noting that ship is entering peak heating. Now 52 minutes into the flight. Starting to get some sunlight down on the Earth below, so a little bit more definition, which is some nice addition. Now below 70 kilometers in altitude, a good view inside the engine bay. Just taking a quick look around. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of SpaceX commentator Dan Hout noting that they changed some of the ways that they dump propellant as ship makes its way back for an aquatic splashdown, which has helped to prevent the issue where some solid propellant built up and took out a chunk of the aft skirt that we saw in Flight 10 that Steven and I were just talking about. Ship has about 13 minutes before the conclusion of its planned landing timeline in the Indian Ocean. And we'll be watching over these next 10 plus minutes for the banking maneuver that SpaceX says it was planning for the ship's final moments. Coming up on 56 minutes into the flight so far. A little bit of a glow there on one of those catch fittings. Not entirely sure if the catch fittings is one of the areas where SpaceX intentionally removed tiles or not. So far, haven't noticed any aggressive areas of burn through on the flaps that we've seen good views of, which is a good indication that the crunch wrap that Bill Gerstenmaier was talking about that was installed around the tiles over the whole host of the vehicle seemed to be doing its job as intended. Of course, SpaceX's ultimate plan is to create a fully reusable heat shield that will allow for rapid turnaround of Starship. SpaceX noting that they are beginning their bank maneuver. A little more than 58 minutes into the flight.
Yeah, this actually does remind me of the role reversals or S-turns that the space shuttle would do during reentry. I was trying to imagine what they would mean by a dynamic bank maneuver, but this does look familiar.
Yeah, the vehicle passing through max Q, and appreciate the shuttle context, Stephen. Given the 30 years of shuttle heritage, I'm sure there's some learning that was able to be ported over from that for maneuvers like this, as SpaceX is doing more dynamic things, some of which are mirroring what the shuttle used to do. Obviously, very or different flight profile, but still need to have an intact heat shield that protects the ship from re-entering, like the shuttle heat shield kept astronauts and the shuttle orbiters mostly safe on the way back in.
We might be seeing a little bit of glow on the aft flap, but nothing approaching what we saw on the last flight. The damage we saw on the last flight. This looks still intact, but just a bit of a glow.
Yeah, I wish they could go to that camera that I think is facing the aft flap near the back end of the ship upper stage, because it does look like there are some embers that are popping off. Oh, and they've got a helicopter, it looks like this time. Or a drone in the area.
Should be a great view. And I'll just say the glow may not be a problem, because the shuttle tiles would glow when subjected to heat. So just because we haven't seen it before doesn't mean it's necessarily a problem.
That's very true. A little more than an hour into the mission, we're coming up on the SpaceX says they're really heavy bank maneuvers, so keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be watching very closely for how Starship maneuvers, which will inform what we should be seeing on future flights of version 3. There should be some really cool shots of it as it makes its splashdown. This drone in the air, and I imagine a separate drone in the water. GoPro on one of the buoys like we saw last time. And there's the SpaceX buoy view. Bobbing a fair amount there in the Indian Ocean. Now T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes into the mission. Starship now about 25 kilometers in altitude, less than 2,000 kilometers per hour in speed. Roughly 3 minutes to the splashdown. Ship now
Descending
entering.
through-
Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, just noting they're descending through about 60,000 feet, so approaching the altitude of a typical airliner here in a moment.
And entering into the so-called belly flop position. SpaceX intending to go from 3 to 2 engines as it completes the landing burn here. Engine ignition coming up in about a minute and a half. A lot of movement with this camera because it's positioned on the tip of one of the forward flaps. Final minute before engine ignition. Here's the banking maneuver that we were told would happen around this part of the flight. Coming up to the start of the landing burn. Less than 10 seconds. Three Raptors and a flip. Three to two, and you could there you see just a little bit of ship off the edge of the buoy cam. And a big ol' explosion as Starship hits the Indian Ocean and wraps up this chapter of the Starship program. The final flight of a version 2 ship and a V2 booster. Lots of excitement there with the SpaceX employees. Let's listen into Dan.
What a day. A whole lot more to go through. As you just saw, everybody here at Starbase pretty hyped. Hey, Tyler, out of Hawthorne, how's everybody holding up?
Thank you, Dan. We had a fantastic time watching. It was another exciting Starship flight test in the books, and we hope that you enjoyed those Starlink views too. So congratulations to the team at Starbase and everyone here and around the company. So many employees contribute to the Starship program as we continue to iterate and make progress towards a multi-planetary future. So that wraps it up for us here in Hawthorne. Thank you for tuning in, and back to you guys.
Yeah, what an incredible launch today. We had successful liftoff. Booster completed its objective, successfully splashed down over in the Gulf. Obviously, we saw another amazing Starlink deploy as well from ship.
Yeah, we made it through that re-entry, testing all the different experience. We had missing tiles, gave us quite the light show. We had that Raptor relight, 3 for 3. That was ahead of re-entry, of course. And then that awesome splashdown that we just saw, including that dynamic banking maneuver to simulate RTLS when we returned to the launch site. So yeah, we promised maximum excitement, and Starship delivered.
Definitely.
Congrats to all our teammates at SpaceX and to everyone who's supporting the Starship program. And thank you to all our future customers for your support.
We'd also like to thank the fine people of Cameron County, including the residents of its newest city, Starbase, as well as the Coast Guard, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Government of Mexico, and the Australian Space Agency.
Yeah.
And we're going to go ahead and start to wrap things up as we have seen the good splashdown of Ship 38. But before we go, we of course want to thank our friend and space reporting colleague, Stephen Clark, over at Ars Technica. Stephen, your final thoughts on Starship Flight 11, the closing of this chapter, and, you know, just the fact that while they've gotten through this phase in the Starship program, that there's still quite a ways to go for version 3 and some of the big objectives that it has, especially where it concerns the U.S. taxpayer with the Artemis program and its role as the human landing system.
Yes, still a ways to go. I think we'll have to wait a few months before we see Starship version 3 fly from Starbase. In the meantime, we'll see a lot of testing coming up with version 3. We'll see static fires, proof testing, all sorts of things as they activate both Pad B and prepare for Starship version 3 to debut. But a very successful flight today. Version 2 is going out in a blaze of glory. The flight was very successful from start to finish. That was probably the cleanest Starship flight that I've seen so far. I really need to think about that before I put that in words in a story. But yeah, very little sign of any damage to the vehicle. A pinpoint splashdown of Super Heavy and Starship. And yeah, a great flight, a great way to end this generation of Starship after a troubled start.
Yes, indeed. And